What is up, everybody? We are back here at King Film Sports for the NFL Week 4 betting locks and game predictions, and we have a few big picks coming up this week, so be sure to stay tuned for that. But first, we'll get into a brief recap here. Before we do that, please be sure to like and subscribe and join the Betting Picks Discord. Link in the description. We've been doing immaculate in college football and been giving out some spreads and player props on the days of these games in college football and NFL for the primetime games and all the Sunday slate. So be sure to check that out after you watch this video. So we're going to get into the brief recap here. First, we had the Dolphins team total over 17.5. They end up scoring 21 there, so that's a winner. They actually comported themselves pretty well, I thought, in this game, although they do lose due to the late Tua interception and fall to 0-3. Then on the Sunday slate, we had the Falcons-Panthers over 43, and Atlanta unfortunately did not score a point. I don't think that they warranted a 30-point blowout. Really, just everything went wrong. Couple missed kicks. Penix looked absolutely atrocious there with a couple huge interceptions. So just a very tough loss for Atlanta there. Then we had the Browns plus 7.5. Added this one in the Discord just because the Browns defense is so good. Tough spot with the Packers O-line, couple injuries there, and Myles Garrett and that Browns D-line just absolutely went off. Yes, they were down 10-0 in the fourth quarter, but they end up tying the game. Couple huge Packers miscues on their offense and their special teams, and the Browns actually end up winning this one in regulation. Electric finish there in Cleveland to get the Browns their first win. Then we had the Texans plus 7.5 as the first leg of our teaser here. Definitely thought that this Houston team was the better team for a majority of that game. This offense and CJ Stroud, there is something massively wrong, but they do end up covering for the first leg of our teaser there, but do fall to 0-3. So tough times at Houston. Then the next play is perhaps the worst beat that we've ever had in the last few years of this channel in betting. Maybe one of the worst in betting history. We have the Rams plus 3.5 or plus 4, whatever you got it at. You were fine the entire game. Basically, after the first quarter, the Rams take a 20-point lead, I think, or up multiple possessions at least for a majority of this game. The Eagles end up driving, taking the lead late, which was already pretty bad. Joshua Carty already had a field goal attempt blocked earlier in the fourth quarter, but Rams are down 1. Spread is not in doubt. Joshua Carty in the waning seconds takes the field goal for the win, and it gets blocked. Jalen Carter takes it to the house. Absolutely disgusting beat there as the Eagles win by 8. And the Rams defense and their cornerbacks definitely have to be addressed there, and just their special teams was disgusting down the stretch, and that could just cost us the cover and them the game. Then we had the Jets and the Bucks. We had the Jets plus 7. Actually ended up getting pretty lucky here, although this one was back and forth in the fourth quarter in terms of this spread. The Jets got a late touchdown. Tyrod Taylor was not great for most of the day, but he does end up backdooring the spread. And then the Bucks up 6, take a field goal late, and it ends up getting blocked for the touchdown, and then Baker has to lead Tampa Bay for another game-winning fourth quarter drive, and of course he does it there, and the Bucks win again. They are 3-0 with a point differential of positive 6, so winning these games by 2 points a game, but they are still undefeated there. Then we had the Colts-Titans. Not much to say here. Titans were dealing with a lot of injuries, and they give up 41, I think, to this Colts offense. Colts offense is red hot, and the Titans just struggling there, now down to 0-3. Then we gave out the Raiders-Commanders over 44 in the Discord, and this one was an easy winner here. Even without Jaden Daniels, this Marcus Mariota-led Washington offense was humming, and the Raiders had a few scores of their own. Then we had the Broncos plus 3 against the Chargers, and this one, although it ended in a push, was pretty infuriating. Broncos, for most of the second half, were dominating this game against the Chargers. Their defense was holding up very well. I thought there were a couple deep balls that Bo Nix missed. He really didn't have his best game, and he hasn't been playing great this entire season. But Broncos led by 7 late, and then Justin Herbert leads the Chargers down for a touchdown to tie it, and then they get the ball back and score at the end of regulation there. So another heartbreaking loss for this Denver team. Then we had the Bears in an ultra-sharp spot, must-win game at home, and they absolutely dominated this Cowboys defense. And once CeeDee Lamb went out on the Cowboys offense, that was all she wrote there. Bears win by 17 points, I think, there. Then the second leg of our teaser was a pretty entertaining game, low-scoring dogfight between the Cardinals and the Niners. Both these teams very injured, but the Niners do end up winning on the last-second field goal there by 1 point. Teaser was safe the entire game there, so we do end up hitting those 2 legs. And then we added this one on Sunday night. primetime game, Giants +6. This one should have easily got home if Graham Gano is healthy, the Giants kicker there, or Russell Wilson can do anything productive in the red zone, but he cannot, so the Giants end up losing by 13, costing us the cover there, and now Russell Wilson has subsequently been benched. And then on the Monday night game, very surprising here, the Ravens just do not look like themselves from the past couple of seasons, and the Lions, even with the Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn loss, both of their coordinators, they are looking very good even after that week 1 loss to the Packers here. That offense is in stride here. Jared Goff, one of his better games in the running game, is cooking there. Ravens also dealing with a few injuries, but they end up losing outright on primetime there. So that brings us to the week 4 slate here, and we have a few more big matchups, so we'll get into these here. Starting out with the Thursday night matchup between the Seahawks and the Cardinals. One of these teams will be 3-1 from the NFC West. A couple of sleeper teams coming into this season. In this one, our lock is going to be the team total under on the Cardinals, under 21.5 here. And really just comes down to that James Conner injury. I do not think that they have a great backup running back here. You've got Trey Benson and Amari DiMercato. So I think that is a bit of a struggle for them there. And then the receiving core, I know you have Michael Wilson and Trey McBride, the star tight end. But really, who else besides that? Marvin Harrison had a couple huge drops last week. So I don't know who the Cardinals are going to target downfield. Kyler Murray has been decent this season, but nothing spectacular, especially against the Seahawks defense, who has been one of the top units in the league. They did great last week against the Saints. They held the Niners in check in week 1 and then played great in Pittsburgh in week 2. So I do think that McDonald, their coach, has been an excellent defensive coordinator in the league for years. He was decent last year, and I think that this Seahawks defensive unit has been improving. And I do think that the Seahawks end up winning this game, and they've just been playing great against this Cardinals team, have had a great matchup against them for the last few years. So I do think that they will be able to keep Kyler in check. Both of these teams dealing with a bevy of injuries, so we'll see on the short week who ends up playing. I do think that Darnold could hit a couple big plays over the top that Mac Jones and the Niners weren't able to last week, just because this Cardinals secondary is ravaged by injuries, as I said. So a lot of uncertainty here, but we will lock in the Cardinals under 21.5 there. I think that this one is a bit of a dogfight. Then we go to Dublin, where we've got the Vikings and the Steelers. One of these teams will be 3-1 here. Who would have thought that? We got Carson Wentz going against Aaron Rodgers, and do think that that game last week was a bit of a fluke in terms of the final score. Vikings winning by over 30 points there. Obviously, a few big defensive plays from Minnesota against the Bengals at home to bounce back, but I do think that Carson Wentz, in the aggregate, is the better player over J.J. McCarthy, at least for now. He was clicking with Kevin O'Connell, and I do not think that the Steelers' defense is especially good. The Patriots were able to move the ball last week. It was just a few big turnovers. I think they turned the ball over maybe 4 or 5 times there, and I think that the Vikings offense will be more prudent in this matchup and be able to move the ball there. Also big that they're getting Jordan Addison back to be able to target that Pittsburgh Steelers secondary. I just do not think that Aaron Rodgers will have the consistency to move the ball against this Minnesota defense. I think that he will turn the ball over like he has been doing these last 3 weeks, so I do think that conduces to a Minnesota win overseas. Then we get to a betting lock here, Commanders and the Falcons. This one opened at 3, quickly went down to 2. Now it's sitting around 1.5. Try and get the 2 if you can, but if the line's already moved, then I guess just take the Falcons money line at whatever it is. And it's looking like Jaden Daniels potentially not going to play in this matchup here. I don't think that it's the biggest drop-off you see. Marcus Mariota is a veteran in this league, and he looked great last week against the Raiders, but I just think that this is a classic bounce-back spot. We see a lot of these games where the backup comes in for the first game, he looks great, and then it starts to wane as you go forward. And I do think that that could be the case as you get more film on this Mariota-led offense. Atlanta defense, I don't think was too bad last week, and they were great in the first couple of weeks, so I do think they'll be able to bounce back there. And Penix has not looked great so far this season, but I do not think that this Washington defense is anything special. I think that Raheem Morris, the head coach, will drill some energy into them, and they will come out inspired here on their home field to get the bounce-back victory against this Commanders team. So I do love Atlanta on the bounce-back here. Even if Jaden Daniels ends up playing, I do think that this Falcons defense will play a lot better there to get this win. Then we go to the Saints and the Bills, and by far the biggest spread that we've seen so far this season. And give us the Saints plus 17. A lot of these inflated double-digit spreads haven't been coming through these past few seasons in the NFL, just as the top teams have been getting better and the worst teams have seemingly been falling off. Some of this QB play has been atrocious. And the Saints team lost by 30 or 40 points last week in Seattle. It was really ugly. But really, from a yards per play standpoint, they weren't so far behind Seattle. It was really the special teams play that did them in. And so I think that led to an inflated final score. And I think that Rattler, he hasn't been playing so bad here. So I do think that he'll be able to move the ball against the Buffalo defense, who has been their Achilles heel, especially that secondary there. And then the Bills offense, they will be able to move the ball. They'll probably put up 30, 34 points against this Saints defense. But at some point, they are going to call the dogs off against this Saints defense. So I do not think that they're going to be running up the score here. So give me the Saints to cover the number there, plus 17, a bunch of backdoor possibilities, assuming that the Saints aren't down 40 points in this game in the fourth quarter. Next, we get to the first leg of our teaser here. We have the Browns and the Lions. Great win from the Browns last week, but I think it ends there. I think that this Lions team will be able to corral that defensive line. I think they're going to scheme well for it, even on the short week. We're taking this spread from 8.5 down to 2.5 here for this Detroit team at home, fast track. I just think that they'll be able to outscore this Browns team. And for the Browns offense, I think at some point you're going to have to replace Joe Flacco, because for 3.5 quarters of that game, that offense was not being operated in the best fashion. Then we get to an ugly AFC South matchup. One of these teams is going to pick up their first win, and the other is going to fall to a devastating 0-4 record. In this game, spread inflated. I mean, what are you going to take? This Titans team is 3-17 against the spread in their last 20 games, and the Texans, with this offense, they can't score any points. How are they going to win by more than a touchdown? We're targeting the team total here for Tennessee. Give us the Titans over 15 or 15.5 points in this matchup. I do think that Cam Ward has been slowly progressing. I think that he's been playing better over the course of these last 3 weeks. They were able to put up over 20 points last week against the Colts in a blowout loss. And this Houston Texans defense has been decent, but we're only asking for 15 points here. Plus, if the Titans are getting blown out, then they can get a backdoor score here to potentially put them over this total here. I think that he will put the ball in harm's way, Cam Ward, but that could conduce to either an interception or a deep ball touchdown. So I do like the Titans to get over this very low team total there in a hard dogfight against the Texans. Then we get to the Patriots and the Panthers. Give us the Patriots to bounce back minus the 5 points here. Don't get it twisted. Even with that 30-0 big divisional win last week against the Falcons, this Panthers team is one of the worst in the league here. The Patriots are nothing special themselves, but they quite literally fumbled that game away. Just so many inopportune mistakes from New England last week to lose to that Steelers team. They should not have lost that game. I do think that Drake May will play a lot better against this Panthers defense, who is one of the worst in the league. And I think Bryce Young comes back down to earth against a Patriots defense who will be able to force some mistakes out of him here. And ultimately, I just do not think that this Panthers beat-up O-line will be able to block the Patriots. And I do think that the Patriots O-line has a great matchup against the Panthers D-line. So I just think in a matchup of trench warfare here, Patriots will be able to dominate that matchup. So give us New England to win by at least a touchdown there. Then we get to the Chargers and the Giants, 3-0 versus 0-3, but interesting storyline. I mean, Chargers going across country, 10 a.m. body clock kick here in MetLife Stadium, and then you've got Jackson Dart in his first ever start here in the NFL. It can't be much worse than it was for Russell Wilson last week and in week 1. But I don't know. This is a very tough matchup here, even on his home field against this Chargers defense. Do think that the Dart play here and a lot of the scheme that Brian Daboll might be running adds some variance in this game. So no betting lock as of yet here, but I do think that the Chargers win a bit of a low-scoring matchup there. Then we get to 3-0 versus 3-0, the two probably luckiest teams in the league thus far, Eagles and Buccaneers. No spread play on this game. The Eagles, for what it's worth, last 2 times they've gone down to Tampa Bay, they have gotten absolutely blown up, whether it be that playoff matchup a couple years ago or last season when they were a couple injured in this very week, week 4. But in this case, Tampa Bay is the more injured team here, so I will take the Eagles to win this one. Spread sitting around 3.5, so we will monitor that near the end of the week here. But for now, I will take low confidence in the Eagles to win that game against the banged-up Bucs. Then we have the 3-0 Colts heading to LA against the Rams. I'm going to take the Rams here, spread sitting at about 3.5, so no play there. I am a bit concerned about Stafford and potentially some of the rumors looming around his back. That was one of my concerns coming into the season. So assuming that he's healthy here, I do like the Rams to win this game because the Colts, though their offense has been humming, averaging over 30 points a game to start out the year, their defense has quietly been one of the worst units in the league thus far. So we'll see how they do against this Rams offense. I do think that it could be a bit of a shootout here in SoFi Stadium, but give us the Rams to win that one and cool off the Red Hot Colts. Then we're taking the Niners to beat the Jags on their home field. And this one, another interesting game in terms of the injuries. We know that Nick Bosa out for the season. And Juwan Jennings, could he be back for this one on the Niners offense? Will Brock Purdy be back as the starting quarterback? That is a very interesting question. I do think that Purdy returns here. Spread seems to be indicating so. And I think that their offense will be rolling much better than it was last week. And Jags, Trevor Lawrence has been up and down so far. They really didn't deserve to win last week, and a very turbulent outing the time before that in Cincinnati. So I do think that the Niners defense, even without Nick Bosa, will be able to force a couple of mistakes there. Then we get to the one that everyone's been waiting for, Ravens and the Chiefs. And this one of these teams can be falling down to 1-3. At that record, you're definitely not getting the 1 seed and first round bye. Probably not winning your division either, at least in the case of the Chiefs. Maybe not making the playoffs. That is a very tough position. In this game, I'm going to be taking the Ravens minus the 2.5. I fully acknowledge this is not the team from the last 2 years, or at least at this point in the season, it's not. That defense is really struggling right now, giving up 41 in week 1 to the Bills, then giving up 38 last week to Detroit. But the reality is that this Kansas City offense at this point is neither of those two teams here. I do not think that the Chiefs get more than 30 points in this matchup. I do think that the Ravens will be able to contain them there just because of the injuries that this Chiefs team has without Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy likely in this matchup, and the other weapons just have not been able to do it thus far. I do think that they will be able to bracket Tyquan Thornton down the field, and I do think that the Ravens, a lot of the offensive woes are due to these Derrick Henry fumbles. He has 3 in the last 3 weeks. I do think that he'll be able to hold on to the ball here, and I do think that he will be able to dominate like Saquon and Jalen Hurts did a couple weeks ago. So very tough environment, but I do think that the Ravens will go into Kansas City and win this matchup. So give me them to win minus 2.5 points. Then we get to an interesting matchup, Bears at the Raiders here. This is the second leg of our teaser. Not really understanding why the Raiders are favored in this matchup, so we'll tease the Bears up to plus 7.5. I could see them struggling if Caleb Williams has some struggles throwing the ball down the field as he did in the first 2 weeks, but he was really clicking last week. And this Raiders defense isn't too much better than the Cowboys defense, so I think it'll kind of be similar to that matchup. Raiders are due for a great offensive performance, and the Chicago defense isn't great, especially with a lot of the secondary injuries that they have. So that could be an interesting battle there for Geno Smith and that Raiders offense to get some points on the board. But I ultimately see the Bears keeping this at least a one-possession matchup. I do see them winning outright as well. So give us the Bears plus 7.5, second leg of our teaser. Then we get to a very interesting primetime game, Micah Parsons trade, obviously the key storyline here. And I would think this is a good Cowboys spot for the spread, but without George Pickens there, it's going to be very tough for this Cowboys team. Packers as well. Second leg of this road trip, but I do think that they will be able to bounce back here in a big spot in Dallas there. So I do think that their defense will be able to stop Dak Prescott, and this Cowboys defense cannot stop anyone here. So I do think that Jordan Love goes off for a big day. Then we get to the Monday night doubleheader. Not much to be said in this matchup of AFC East 0-3 teams, Jets and Dolphins. I do say that the Jets win this game with very little confidence here. I just think that the QB play has been so up and down. If they can just get a game with minimal turnovers, then they will be able to win that one there. I just think that their defense is playing better than Miami's defense, but no sort of confidence in that pick at all. And then we get to the second game, Bengals and the Broncos. We're taking the Bengals plus 7.5 here. Yes, it is their second straight week on the road, but you see a lot of these teams that lose by 30 plus points in the NFL. Then the next week, they get coached really hard, come out motivated, and cover the spread the next week. A lot of times because you see these inflated numbers like the Bengals catching more than a touchdown here in the Mile High City. Reminder, we're already on the Saints plus 17 who got blown out last week, and the Falcons against the Commanders. Just think that this is one of those classic rah-rah spots where they come out very dialed. Broncos definitely need this game as well, but I just do not think that Bo Nix has been playing very well thus far this season here. So even though this Bengals defense is very bad, they didn't really sell that game last week against Minnesota. It was really a lot of those turnovers. So do think that Jake Browning will play better here, and those position players hopefully will not fumble here for Cincinnati, and they can keep this one in the number. So with all that being said, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. As always, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next one.